Let's put together some of the formulas that we just learned. This one, we have the cost of producing X luxury recliners is given by C of X, which is 200,000 plus 265X. First formula we're going to practice is actual cost. We're going to find the actual cost of the 201st unit and the 401st recliner, and then we're going to compare that to the marginal cost. Marginal approximates actual for the next unit. So plugging in 200 is going to estimate the 201st, and plugging in 400 is going to estimate the 401st. So we're going to first do in part A the long way of finding the same exact information that we're going to find in part B, because marginal cost in part B estimates the actual cost that we found in part A. So they might not be the exact same number. Usually they are, but even if they're not, we know that marginal does a pretty good job of estimating the actual cost, just much faster to just plug into the derivative than to use this formula that we're going to do at first. So plugging into the actual cost formula, we want to find the 201st recliner. What's the actual cost for that? And compare it to the 401st. Is the cost going up as they produce more? Is it kind of leveling out to be the same number? What's happening? So to find the 201st, we want to plug into the actual cost formula, which says plug in first the number that you want to find, so C of n, minus C of n minus 1, so minus the number before. So to find 201st, we would plug in C of 200 minus, C of 201 minus C of 200. And where we're plugging this in is to the original function. So I'd grab my calculator, I'd plug in 200,000 plus 265 times 201 at first, and you could plug that into your calculator. You should get $253,265. That's the total cost for all 201 recliners. Okay, and now let's subtract how much it costs them to produce just 200. So plugging into the same formula, 200,000 plus 265 times 200, and what I'm getting here is just $253,000 even. So for all 201, it cost $253,265, and then for all 200, it was just $253,000 even. So this difference, it cost them an additional $265 to produce that one extra recliner, that 201st recliner. So to write this in a sentence, it's $265. We would label this as the actual cost to do what? What do you do to have cost? Do you produce or do you sell? Because I want to get this right here. To have cost, all you have to do is produce. You don't have to sell to have cost like you would for revenue or profit, what we're coming up to. So $265 is the actual cost to produce just the 201st recliner. And I like to say just because all 201 cost $253,265. A lot of money to produce that many recliners. But to do just the 201st is $265. So if they're selling these things for $200, they probably don't want to bump their production up that high because then the cost is outweighing how much they're selling it for. But if they're selling these recliners for $1,000, hey, might as well produce one more because it's only costing you an extra $265. And let's compare that to the 401st recliner. Is it getting much more expensive to produce a couple hundred more, or what's the actual cost for adding a unit when your production is that high? So you're going to do C of 401, the number you're interested in, minus C of 400, the number before. Plugging into the original formula, 200,000 plus 265 times 401 first. That total cost for all 401 recliners I'm getting is $306,265. That's for all 401 because we plugged into the total cost, minus the total cost for 400. 200,000 plus 265 times 400 in your calculator should give you $306,000 as your total cost for producing 400 recliners. So you subtract those and see that the difference in adding one more recliner in there, the difference is $265. So sometimes it'll be a different number. This one, it's not because it's a linear function. It's growing by the same slope every time. How we would interpret this is we said 265 is the actual cost to produce. Again, we're talking about cost, so that's why we're saying produce instead of sell. That would be revenue or profit. So actual cost to produce just the 401st recliner. Okay. So that was a very long way of finding the answer. We are smart calculus students. We can find the answer by doing a shortcut. We're just going to take the derivative, which is called marginal cost, and we're going to plug in 200 because that's going to estimate the 200 first. We should get around the same answer here. It's an estimate. It might not be perfect, but it should be close. And then we can plug in 400, and that's going to get the same answer here. So one, it's quicker because you're only plugging in once. You're plugging in one number, it estimates the next unit. And two, it's quicker because the derivative is shorter to plug into. So, much better deal here. Marginal approximates actual for the next unit. So plugging in 200 is going to estimate that 200 first. So first I'm going to show my derivative. That way if I plug in and get it wrong, I can at least get partial credit for having my derivative, right? So marginal cost, we're going to label it C prime of x. Derivative of 200,000 is 0. Derivative of 265x, that was our mini rule, it's 265. Ooh, so this is going to be pretty easy to plug into. No matter what x you plug into, there's no place to put it. C prime of x, the derivative marginal cost is always 265. So I can show plugging in 200. It's going to estimate the 200 first, but C prime of 200 is still just going to stay 265. There's no place to plug in the x. This is why we like the shortcut. So much faster. C prime of 200. The interpretation is difficult. Let's write this down. So we have the approximate, because it's not always perfect. For this one, it actually was. It was spot on with what we got for the actual cost up here. So normally we would say this is the approximate actual cost for doing what? Producing or selling? It'd be producing, if you're talking about cost. For producing the what number? Plugging into marginal approximates actual for the next unit. So for producing the 200 first recliner is, and our output is money, $265. So this is worth a few points on the exam because there's a lot of things I'm looking for here. So one thing, C prime is estimating the actual cost. So you want to say actual and then the right thing because we're going to do a few different approximations in this lesson. I also want to know what you're doing. For cost, you're producing or making. And then the correct unit, it's always the next unit from what you plugged in. So 200 estimates the 200 first. And then how much money do you think it is? So a lot of pieces to the sentence, so the sentence is worth a few points on the exam. Definitely something that you want to know and probably something you didn't know before this course. So let's compare that to plugging in to marginal again, but we're going to plug in our other value here. This 400 is going to estimate the 400 first. So C prime of 400, super easy function to plug into. There's no x to plug in anywhere. It's always 265, which makes sense because we got 265 for both these answers as well. And I'm going to write the same sentence a different way, just so whatever option you like better, you can use. So 265, I would say the estimated actual cost, again cost because it's C prime that I plugged into, so marginal cost is going to estimate actual cost. I want to make sure I have that piece in here. And I would say for making the 400 first, always the next unit, so 400 estimates the 400 first. Recliner is $265. There's our interpretation. And again, it did it perfectly. We'll see another example in just a little bit where the marginal doesn't perfectly estimate the actual, but it gets close enough that we would want to use the shortcut whenever we can.